It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Monday, June 3rd, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that's talking the Flyers side of the Florida Panthers' success and those unsigned prospect defensemen.
That's a lot.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. We are at Locked On Flyers on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Twitter as well. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 with any winning $5 bet. Visit fanduel.com/locked on to get started. You can find our show over on YouTube or on the SiriusXM app or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Russ, we did talk about some of the unsigned prospect forwards last week on Friday. So we're going to continue that conversation and talk about the couple of defensemen and where they fit in our prospect depth. But we cannot avoid the fact that the Florida Panthers have now reached the Stanley Cup Finals for 2 years in a row. And I think that it was an absolute clinic what they were able to do against the New York Rangers.
Yeah, I mean they shut down most all their lines. They made it impossible once you cross the blue line to really get
Yeah.
anything good on Bob. When Bob was tested, he was good, and they did just enough scoring. I think people have it wrong when they say, "Well, there was 5 games that was separated by just 1 goal." Yeah, that's fine, but it doesn't really matter. Like that means
Yeah.
nothing. All that means is if the Rangers didn't have Igor Shesterkin, they'd have lost them 5 instead of 6.
Yeah. Or lost by more goals in those
Or lost by
games.
more goals in each game, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's all that is that you had one guy keeping it together
Yep,
for the Rangers to keep them in all those games. And so there was one game that they did wind up winning that maybe they wouldn't have.
mhm.
I think their other win was more earned. But I think, yeah, I think that's exactly what happened. But I think that what's so great about this Florida team right now is that they have an excellent, excellent goaltender in Sergei Bobrovsky, who we all know well in Flyers land. But he is not everything to that team. He's a big part of that team, but he is not everything to that team in the same
No.
way. And I think that that's, one of the things that we loved about having him here is that even when he was that young and, hadn't really matured as a goaltender yet completely, that he could just make excellent saves in the clutch. But, you didn't really, if he had a slow game, it was going to be okay.
Right. Yeah, no question, and, I'm starting to see, like, headlines like, "Worst trade the Flyers ever made," and so, it's a complicated thing because once they got Ilya Bryzgalov, Bob was the backup because Bryzgalov was making all the money, but come Winter Classic time, and I remember I was waiting, I guess it was Laviolette, right? Waiting to hear
Mhm.
from Laviolette. So we're kind of waiting around on this outside area, and Ilya's Brizgalov walked right by us. He had a piece of gum in his mouth, and he slammed it in the garbage can. And we tried to talk to him, and he wouldn't talk to anybody, and he just left the room. And I looked at another guy, and I said, "I guess he's not the starter for the Winter Classic," and that started the trouble between him and Bob because then Brizgalov started causing trouble with he and Bob, and the Flyers at that point had to trade Bob because they had all this invested in Brizgalov and they were hoping to get something out of the guy, get his form back, and really never happened. But that's why they got rid of Bob. Now, and again, Ed Snyder was the one who engineered getting Brizgalov so they couldn't just drop him after a year, owing him all that money, even though they still owe him money, and there's think they were still paying him up till this year. So
No, they're paying him through 26, 27,
oh, see, it's even better.
according to Cap Friendly.
Even
So
longer than I thought. So yeah, so I mean, it's a complicated situation. So I don't think you could just simply say it's like the worst trade in Flyers history because it's not something they wanted to do. They had to do it.
yeah, and I think that it's not Bobrovsky's fault that Ilya Bryzgalov was very inconsistent at the
Right.
time. Like, how do we blame him for that? And then Bob
Can't.
get get that Winter Classic start, and it was deserved because we could not depend on Briz at the time in
No.
net.
No.
And so you had to make that decision. Like there just wasn't a way around that at the time. And then that's going to create the conflict. And so something had to be done. The owner and management was monetarily, and I think also from an ego perspective, in on Brizgalov. I don't
Yeah.
think that time they could give up on him yet. I mean, clearly,
No.
the buyout happened in the offseason in 2013, so it was like a little bit later, but
Right.
you know, at that time, there it was like poker, all in, hands,
Correct.
cards, the pot was all in. You just have to keep riding it. And so I think, yeah, you can't really look back on this with revisionist history or with
No.
2020 hindsight because at the time, that's what it was going on.
Yeah. And I mean, yes, Bob has made the cup 2 consecutive years. Bob wasn't going to make the cup with the Flyers that year and probably wasn't going to do it the year after. And who knows if he ever would have done it. I mean, you have to look at all the work Bill Zito did with these Florida Panthers to get them this way so that they are a team that could get back to the cup. Just getting to the cup is one thing, getting back in consecutive years is hard. And I think they're going to win it this year. And that's a really hard thing to do. And so, you know, that's that's something where, like you said, Bob is part of that ingredient because he is a veteran now and he does steady the ship to some degree and guys like that. But there's a lot more that goes into this team.
Yeah, and I think, obviously, looking bigger picture than even the Briz Bob situation for the Flyers, I think that's something that, in the NHL with people looking to what rebuild model is the one that's going to guarantee you a spot in the Stanley Cup Final. And it just goes to show you that there isn't one, and that the simple answer is you have to have a well-rounded team that can do a lot of things and has the depth to sustain it. And like it's as simple as that. And that's what Florida is right now. It's not just Bob that's
Right.
doing
And 2 years ago they paid Spencer Knight because they thought he was the next goalie and Bob was
it.
not what he is this moment. He was going through
Yeah.
some struggles. And so they hedged their bet. They were like, well, we don't know if Bob's even the guy. So we got Spencer Knight, and then we know what happened with him.
Yeah.
So his career took a little bit of a left turn, and now I think it's getting back on track. But that's the thing. Even back then, they didn't know Bob was going to be able to do this because they were losing faith in him.
No. No. Well, and he did spend that time in Columbus,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, that's going way back. But
which
yes,
was
he did.
right. So it's like there are different phases to his
Yes.
career, and it
Yes.
has definitely been interesting. I think, again, the big picture answer there is that goalies are weird. But I think
Yeah.
that, when you look at goalie development and when they come into their own and are at their strongest, and you just look at some of the guys that have just been epic goaltenders, and that have ultimately like had issues throughout their career, whether it's somebody like Carey Price or even Murray. Like
Yeah.
the highs and lows
Oh,
have
yeah.
been so big for him, and that it's like everything coming together at the right time. So there's like that luck for
Mhm.
it too. When you have a good goaltender that's maybe not, I mean, you can't start having a conversation, is Bob a Hall of Fame goaltender?
Right.
I don't know that that's the case at this point, but I think that he's one of the pieces that is coming together right now that's
Right.
making this team work. But I
And
I don't know. I just don't think the Flyers should have any regrets.
no, and it's another thing. I think also the fans should understand that they already had a nucleus of guys that, when added to it, really made them this Cup team. The Flyers don't have that nucleus of players yet. It takes a while to get that nucleus of players, however you do it, whether it's combination of
Yeah.
draft, trades, all these things, signings. So, that's the other thing.
Yeah, I think so. It is somewhat of a mystery, somewhat of an art, and somewhat of a science.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely a little luck thrown in,
Oh,
and
yeah.
there's a lot to it, but certainly wish Bobrovsky all the luck in the final. We don't know
Absolutely.
who it'll be against as of
Not
recording.
yet.
The Oilers may have won. We don't know, but we will certainly talk about it when we do, and the final is set. In the meantime, the Flyers are trying their darndest to get some of that planning together and hopefully sprinkle some luck on it. They've got some prospect defensemen that have not been signed yet. We're going to talk about them coming up next. Passion, drive, and patience, the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. So on tomorrow's show, we are going to take a look at Ryan Paling's season in review. A really interesting story for the Flyers, I think, with him signed on a prove-it contract. He got re-signed. His role changed as the season progressed, and it'll be interesting to see what his role looks like as part of this overall rebuild. We're going to talk about that on tomorrow's show. Plus, we'll answer your mailbag questions on Wednesday. So get those in. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com, send us a message on Twitter, or comment on our YouTube channel. Last week, we did talk about the unsigned prospect forwards and likelihood of them getting signed and kind of where they all fit. And there's fewer of the defensemen on that list. We really only have 4 unsigned defensemen in the Flyer system right now that have not had a contract before. There are other players that have already had ELCs that were awaiting RFA offers and all of that. But wanted to take a look at them and see where they fit in the context of the other prospect defensemen. And I think, the number one on the list is Carter Southern, right?
Hmm. Yeah, he looks to me like he could be a number 5. If you can get a number 5, with a 5th round pick, you're doing okay. He's good in transition. He's a pretty good defenseman. The offensive side is there. I don't know
Mhm.
how high the offense would be in the NHL. We'll kind of wait and see. But just to have guys who could bring the puck up the ice and make good transitions, those are guys you want now. I mean, they're not all going to be scorers.
Yeah, he's first off, he's a right-handed defenseman, which is
Hmm.
always good to have those in your system. He's 6'3", so decent size, already up around 200 pounds. He's also a little bit younger. He's turning 19 later this month. So, I think he has a little bit more runway than some of the other guys
He does.
do. And he's playing on the Portland Winterhawks and then WHL. You should know by now how much the two of us love the WHL
Oh yeah.
as a developmental league, and it's getting better and better every year. And you look at his progression from his first year where he had 23 points. This past year, he had 40 points. And I think that's a pretty good growth for a defenseman in that league.
Yeah, and he's going to get physically stronger. He will get faster
Mhm.
as it goes on, and then when he starts to get to the AHL, yeah, there's going to be some time that he'll have to spend in the AHL. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think you're still probably talking because he is a little younger, maybe getting him at 21, 22, probably 22. And if that's the case, that's good.
Yeah, I think so. I think especially with defensemen, as we've talked about, they need a little bit longer to cook.
Yeah.
And I think him being younger gives him a little bit of extra time to do that without some of the
Yes.
pressure on him. I should say that, he had those extra points, the 40 points in two less games this
Hmm.
year than he played last year. His playoffs were very good as well. 14 games played, 4 goals, 7 assists.
Yeah, it's really
Uh,
good. I mean,
so coming up big in the playoffs in the WHL is very important. So I am very hopeful about this kid. I think that he has a lot of potential, and I think like if he's coming in, you know, I, I'm looking at like Ethan Sampson
hmm
as the guy that he would be in competition with in terms of pecking order here.
yeah, I
But
could see
what do
that.
you think?
No, I think you're right. I think that's a good choice actually, and I think that may be the way it sort of shakes out.
Yeah, I think so too. The other guy that the Flyers have to keep an eye on is Ty Murchison,
Hmm.
and he is with Arizona State University. And so, obviously a D1 program, but not the top of the top
No, but they're
in
switching this year.
D.
They're switching
Yeah,
conferences, so it's going to get
they
harder
are.
for Arizona State.
Yeah, I think this is going to be an interesting thing to watch with him because this will be his fourth year
Right.
at school next year. And you're right. Like, I think Arizona is going to have a tougher road ahead. He's not an offensive defenseman at all,
No.
really. But he's a left-handed guy, 6'2". He is obviously older because he's been through 3 years of college. He's 21. And I just I just wonder if there's even a shot here and if he just, does his 4th year, graduates, and becomes a free agent and maybe signs an AHL deal or an ECHL deal somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, he's a physical guy. There's always room for a physical guy if he could do a lot of things, but you know, there's only going to be like probably one big physical guy on the blue line at one time, especially if he's one dimensional like Murchison
Yeah.
is. So his chances of making it aren't great.
Yeah, and I think that's okay. I
Yeah, I
think
mean,
that
for the
this was
AHL, it's good.
right, and, whether he winds up being in the AHL with the Phantoms or
Hmm.
elsewhere, I don't necessarily think it was a bad pick to make, right? Because I think you look at his size, and what he could do at the time of his draft, I think it was a good risk to take, 5th rounder. I don't have any qualms with the pick in the first place.
Yeah, I don't have any qualms with the pick, but you could see that it just, it's not been an outstanding path here. That's all.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. But certainly, hope he has an excellent 4th year and
Hmm.
that Arizona State can tread water. And we'll see how it goes for him and what his future holds. Mateo, man, we talked about him last week that he had signed a deal with the Royals for this year. And I do wonder if next year he'll come to the Phantoms camp, like he'll sign like a
Yeah, he'll probably
tryout
be in
for the
camp
Phantoms camp.
and see what happens. He's another one that's probably going to be in the lower levels. Maybe he sees a little NHL time as a fill-in because of injuries, but I don't expect that much out of him.
No, and he's coming out of the queue, and the way the queue is with scoring and like a defenseman coming out of the queue is like a huge risk, I would
Oh
say
yeah,
overall. They picked him obviously because he was a right-handed shot and he's 6'6". I
right.
mean, it's a 7th round pick from last year. He is 19 years old, turning 20 in December. So he still has a little bit of time to develop. I wouldn't say he's somebody you give up on, but he feels like an AHL guy.
No, he does. He seems like a quadruple A guy, but that's, you have to have him in your organization, as we say.
Yeah, absolutely. The last defenseman is Brian Zanetti, who is staying in Switzerland for the duration. So, which I think is kind of a bummer because I think I was really high on him for a while and watching him
Yeah, I liked him.
in
I did.
in in international play. I don't think it has been as good as of late, and he had some injuries
He
to
did have
deal
some
with
injuries.
as well. But I was pretty high on him for a while, so it is kind of a bummer.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if, he gets it together when his rights expire and then he, goes somewhere else, some other organization. It just seems like that's the path he's on. I don't know
Yeah.
if the Flyers just expressed zero interest in him or he just really wanted to go back overseas. I never really heard about it, but it just doesn't seem like he'll ever be in this organization again.
Yeah, yeah, it's a shame, but good luck to him in the future as well. It is Monday, so we've got all our fun stuff on Monday coming up next. We've got a new listener poll, we've got our Nemesis, and more. We'll do that next.
It's winner take all time in the NBA and NHL, and FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. It's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Keep betting the Celtics, folks, in whatever way you can. Visit fanduel.com/locked on and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook.
All right. I am excited about this week's off-season poll question because we've talked a lot about the Flyers lineup for next year and the potential there and where the prospects could fit or is there room for them. And, it's been a big topic of conversation, especially around the salary cap and all of that. So, who is most likely to get a spot on the Flyers roster for opening day next season? Is it Ollie Lixel, Emil Andre, Ronnie Attard, or the dark horse Massimo Rizzo? If you have any other players that you think will make it, put those in the comments. Or if you say none of the above but don't know who, that's okay too. Put that in the comments. Very curious what y'all think out there. There'll be a link to that poll, which will be on our YouTube channel. We'll put the link in the show notes as well. So get those votes in. We will talk about them on the Friday show. Our nemesis last week was, for me, the rumors about Matvei Michkov. We were still in the swirl of all of that and not sure if there was going to be news yet. The interview had come out with him saying, everything's fine. I get along in Russia just fine. So things have quieted down a bit since then, which I like.
Yeah, he
But you
took
don't
a
want
picture
to.
with Ovechkin. I guess they were both training together a little bit.
Yeah, yeah. So don't want it to be too quiet for too long, but I think we're at least gonna not know anything for a little bit on that front. For
No,
me,
it'll be a while.
the nemesis for me this week is I have a trip coming up later this week. Don't worry, we'll have shows for all the time, but I think that for me, it's going to be some sort of big news breaking while I'm on vacation. And that is the way it is. I'm knocking on every single piece of wood to try and avoid that from happening. Of course, I'll be prepared to react to anything that happens while I'm away, but I will not be at home. And I'm really looking forward to this trip. I'm going to see the Phillies play the Mets in London, and it should be a good time.
I'll be
And
watching.
yeah, yeah. So very much looking forward to this. So please, Flyers, don't do anything while I'm gone.
Yeah, that's a good one. Uh, my nemesis is, ever since we've heard that, hey, Martin Netjes could be traded. Now
Mm,
we're seeing these things. Well, the Flyers are linked to him. I don't know if the Flyers are linked to him. I highly doubt it because for one thing, he's failed at center. For another thing, they're not just going to give him away. It's not like he can't play the game. He can play the game. He's just,
Yeah.
they just have different idea of what they're looking for in their arsenal there. So the thing about it with Nemesis is they're going to look for a player that's under term for a while, that has upside and isn't too old. So like there really isn't that player for the Flyers to trade for him, in my estimation. They're not going to want Konechny because they're going to have to sign him. They're not going to want Lawton because he's too old. So like who exactly, even if you put Morgan Frost, you're still going to have to put more into that trade, which it's probably not worth it at that point. Like exactly who were the
Yep.
Flyers going to give up that's going to bowl over, the Hurricanes and make them make that deal? I just don't see it happening. So that's my nemesis, because I just feel like, you can't link every free agent to the Flyers just because they're aggressive. That's all. Not free
Yeah,
agent,
and
but
there's other
trade bait. Trade bait.
right,
That's what I meant to say.
right. Well, honestly, both. But the I think the issue is that there's other teams where it makes more sense. It's not that like you couldn't make a trade work with the Flyers. I just think there's other teams and other deals that it makes more sense
Right.
for them to work with here. So we'll see what happens with him. But yeah, I think that right now, given everything, I'm not sure the Flyers making a trade for a bigger name or somebody like that is even in the cards. And I think that's okay. I don't
Yeah,
think
it's
it's a
okay.
bad thing.
No.
So I'm good with where we are now, but something happens, something happens. We'll talk about it on the show as well. Now, the NHL is doing something super fun this year that I know is near and dear to your heart, Russ, because you are an avid dog lover and dog rescuer
Hmm.
and support a lot of those causes and organizations. And they're doing the Stanley Pup this year, almost kind of like the Puppy Bowl for the Super
Yep.
Bowl,
Yep.
but for the dogs, and they're all adoptable dogs, which is fantastic. They're all very cute. We're putting a link to that in the
Yeah,
show
it's a
notes as
TV
well.
event.
Yeah, so they're doing on Friday, I believe.
Yeah, I think so.
It'll be on TV. So it'll be cute, that's for sure. But also for a good cause, and there's some amazing adoptable dogs. I don't know if you have a favorite of the dogs.
I mean, I liked, what was it, Austin Matthews? It was something like that.
Yes.
I'm doing that one from
Yeah.
memory. But yeah, that one I liked. I came up with my own Corey Terry, if they had one, for Corey Perry, because terriers are kind of like
Yeah.
tough and annoying, like Corey Perry is too. Like they just like that. So, but yeah, the Austin Matthews was good. That's my dog.
Yeah, I think, I mean, we talked about Sergei Bobrovsky earlier. There's a Sergei Bobrovsky, which is very, very cute. And I think that what was one of the other ones? Anders Leash was very
Yeah,
cute.
yeah, I remember that
That's
one.
a
Yeah,
good one.
that's a good one.
Unfortunately, they did not name any of these dogs after a Philadelphia Flyer, but it was all playoff teams. So, alas, we did not get one in the bunch. But there's also a lot of other dogs that did not get official names like that, but are still in the list, so you can look at
Yeah,
them
check it out.
there. And if you've got room in your house and your heart for a dog, always encourage you to do so. That will do it for today's show. Thanks so much for listening. Remember, if you've got those mailbag questions or prospects you want us to talk about, you can let us know on Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com or comment over on YouTube. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube that's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus national shows covering every league like Locked On NHL. Find Locked On Sports Today available on the free Fire TV channels app. Have a great day, everyone.